So this is a bit of a different video for me. My usual content is playing and reviewing AC games and making guides, but for the past few months I've been following what's going on with AC Shadows with great interest. I thought the best way to lay out this video was to discuss all of the controversy surrounding it and then explain why I think AC Shadows could still be great. Could being the key word here. So sit back, take a deep breath, watch the video till the end before writing your angry comments, know that I am in no way sponsored by Ubisoft, and let's crack on. So the first big historical inaccuracy, or Shadow's biggest talking point, is one of our protagonist, Yasuke. There is a ton of deliberation between whether he was a samurai, whether he was a retainer, or whether he was essentially a sort of rare commodity for Oda Nobunaga to parade around. What we do know with the limited information on hand is that he is an African man who came over with Jesuit missionaries, likely as a slave, who ended up in the service of Oda Nobunaga. So him being a samurai and him being the focus of an AC game set in Japan, let's just say has not gone down well. We'll talk more on this later. Other historical inaccuracies is that there are currently flags and banners with symbols in this game that never existed. That's quite a rare achievement if you think about it, because I'm sure a quick Google search could have provided the answers they needed for this, but there we are. On top of this, there is also some Chinese architecture within Japanese cities, obviously not accurate, and just to add an extra bit of controversy, some of the music in-game features a sort of hip-hop Japanese mashup for Yasuke, adding somewhat fuel to the fire. But probably the worst mistake they've made, and definitely the most offensive, is the game's statue of Naoi featured on top of a half-Torii gate. I have to assume that this wasn't on purpose, as that is a famed symbol representative of the atomic bombing of Nagasaki. Yikes. So those are, I believe, all of the current historical inaccuracies or embellishments that the game is making, but let's also talk about our other protagonist, Naoi. Now, it's no secret that we live in a culture where sexism is pretty rife, for both men and women. You can of course disagree with me here entirely, but we live in an era where we're constantly discussing masculinity, what makes a man and what makes a woman, wokeism, and we have some very extreme views on both sides. Simply enough, this topic gets clicks, no matter what your opinion is.
Round 1. Fight!
In fact, with the anticipated Ghost of Yotai, the follow-up to Ghost of Tsushima, there's also been a ton of negativity. Not as much as Shadows by any means, but still a lot, solely because the protagonist is a woman. This just goes to show how the landscape has changed over the past few years, as there have been tons of badass female action stars in movies and games before, so why is this suddenly an issue now? Part of me wonders whether the outrage of our other protagonist Yasuke would be so massive if our counterpart was a standard Japanese male. This way, many people might feel satisfied getting to play their ideal standard protagonist with the choice of playing a hulking, heavy-hitting African samurai if they so choose. We'll never know of course, but I'd lean to say there would be less outrage for sure.
Black. If I don't say it, I'll pass out.
So when you couple together historical inaccuracies, an interesting and controversial protagonist, and a company that has a somewhat negative opinion from much of the gaming community, with the current hate-filled social media climate we live in today, you get this.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Taking a step back and looking at all of that, yeah, it's not great. I can't lie to you. Ubisoft should definitely have hired a bunch of historians to make this game as respectful as possible. Above all, it would just show that they care, would help immerse you in the world, and overall will only help your gaming experience. So whilst I think it deserves some backlash for sure, does it deserve the utterly insane outrage it's getting? I don't think it does. It is, first and foremost, a game. Assassin's Creed has always played fast and loose with history, from made-up characters taking part in historical events, mystical Isu gods, even representing real historical people in a way that doesn't reflect what they were actually like. And that is okay. These games have never been historically accurate. The world might try to be accurate, but the gameplay and story certainly never has been. In AC3, for example, Connor was at the damn signing of the Declaration of Independence and led troops on the Battle of Bunker Hill. Did that happen? No. Have you ever seen one comment of someone complaining about this? Probably not. Now, was it sensible to have one of our lead protagonists as an African historical figure in a game set in Japan? It's an interesting choice for sure, and even if you look at it from an Assassin's Creed perspective, So you're a hidden assassin, but you're a foot taller than everyone else with a completely different skin tone. How is that going to work? Well, from a gameplay perspective, they've already showed us exactly how it's going to work. When AC Origins released, granted now it's pretty respected, people hated it because it's an RPG game, and many still do to this day. We then had AC Odyssey and Valhalla, two other massive RPG games, and fans were calling for a revival of the old style of Assassin's Creed. Now we did get AC Mirage dubbed as a return to the roots, which I'm not going to get into, but the point is that we have three sets of AC fans now. People who like the older games, people who like the new RPG style, and people like myself who just like a good game, despite whether there are RPG elements within it or not. So along came AC Shadows, with one protagonist, Naoi, designed to be our assassin and shinobi, highlighted massively in her parkour abilities and stealth aspects from the gameplay we've already seen. And then we have Yasuke, a clear samurai who can't hide for obvious reasons, taking on the big combat scenarios in game, literally smashing through doors and making a shit ton of noise. Yasuke also can't do a leap of faith, nor does he have a hidden blade, because he isn't meant to. This is supposed to be a mashup of both old and new AC gameplay styles. You play how you want, literally choosing which character you'd like to use for each scenario. Even how Yasuke is treated by NPCs, so bowing as he walks past, backing away in fear, looking at him with curiosity, he does not fit within feudal Japan. That is exactly the point. I actually think this could work for a really cool story aspect as well. How is he going to be treated by his other characters? How is he going to establish himself within this world as such a rare commodity? Personally, and it seems like no one is really talking about this given the fact we have a female assassin and a black samurai as our leads, I actually think the gameplay looks pretty good. Stealth looks fun, with new abilities like the grappling hook, utilising the light, strangling people, kunai, hiding on the ceilings, creeping through water, the works. And I also think Naoi's parkour also looks pretty decent too, despite maybe the constant unnecessary flipping. And with Yasuke, I also think his combat looks good as well, kicking people through walls, using a rifle, lots of weapon choices, with a huge amount of gore and a new combat system to boot. And of course, and surely you cannot deny this, the world looks friggin' beautiful. Assassin's Creed, in my opinion, despite their ups and downs, have always delivered beautiful worlds in their games. Even if the story isn't good, that isn't going to be a game-deciding factor for me. I just replayed AC Unity, a game with some fantastic gameplay but a lackluster story. And although its story, in my opinion, is disappointing, it is still one of my favourite AC games. This may be a deal breaker for some people, but for me the story is one important aspect, not the important aspect, which of course is how the game actually plays. And the big reason I'm holding out hope this game will be good is that ultimately Ubisoft needs to get this right, and actually from the update they've given and an article from Insider Gaming, where I'm getting a lot of the upcoming information from, they've definitely made some good first steps. If you don't know, although I'm sure you do, aside the controversy of AC Shadows, Ubisoft has not had a good few weeks. Not only has their stock dropped rapidly, but their latest massive game, Star Wars Outlaws, hasn't performed even close to what they'd hoped. Ubisoft have actually publicly stated that AC Shadows was delayed to polish and refine the experience, and in its earnings update, Ubisoft also shared that the delay was due to the learning from the Star Wars Outlaws release, which by the way, has just surpassed a small 1 million sales, with critics rating the game 76 out of 100 on Metacritic, and the user score at a far lower 5.4 out of 10. So with those numbers, its performance has clearly made them rethink their approach to AC Shadows, with it not only being delayed until February 2025, but with them also putting all Assassin's Creed games back on Steam, a request that supposedly every Ubisoft team has been pushing for years. Sources have said, and I quote, "The team has been actively addressing many of the historical and cultural concerns, which started before the game's reveal following external playtests and were accelerated further following the game's initial reveal and mass feedback. This includes changing some of Yasuke's story and how he's portrayed in the game, fixing architectural details, and ensuring that the game is historically grounded whilst fitting in the Assassin's Creed universe." These are obviously issues that should have been caught much sooner, and supposedly, and I'm quoting again, Historical experts were brought onto the project much later than usual for a project of this magnitude, and that miscommunication between teams and cutting corners when it came to the approval process of assets to meet deadlines were also at play. So there we go. That is why AC Shadows was delayed, and in my opinion, this can only be viewed as a positive. Not only are Ubisoft spending this time on tidying up the historical inaccuracies like the symbol and architecture, making the gameplay as smooth as possible, and adapting certain aspects of Yasuke, what these are I'd love to know, but they're also making extra side content too, dubbed as high impact secondary quests. So we're getting some extra content for free, and as long as it's actually decent, this surely can only be viewed as a good thing. And as a somewhat gesture of goodwill, Ubisoft are even offering refunds on pre-orders, and anyone who pre-orders now will even get the first expansion for free, which is a pretty big deal when you consider that these are usually sold at around £20 or dollars. By delaying the game and putting out their update about it, you can actually see that their stock has increased, although minimally, and supposedly from making this decision, Ubisoft has lost an estimated $20 million, missing the Christmas sales window. There are even rumours that they're in talks with Tencent of being bought out, essentially selling their company to them, something I am sure no one at Ubisoft actually wants. So with all that said, it's a fair guess to say that with many poor gaming releases and the money they've already lost so far, they are going to do everything they can to get Assassin's Creed Shadows and its sales as high as they can possibly get them. A lot is riding on this game, and essentially, fear of failure is the best motivator. Granted, Ubisoft needs to make some changes, but with everything I've just discussed, I am actually optimistic about AC Shadows. Maybe that's because I love Assassin's Creed, I've been replaying them a lot recently, and maybe I'll be eating my words come February, but despite the controversy, I just don't think we can brandish the words trash and terrible before the game is out. Give it a chance, and here's hoping that we might be pleasantly surprised. If you do want to hear my thoughts when the game eventually lands on February 14th, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I will hopefully catch you legends in the next one. Until then.